So on Monday and Tuesday of this week, I mentioned that Jesus did not come to earth in order to give us easy answers. That just wasn't his style. We needed him for something way more than that. And our gospel today plays right into that same idea, because Christ, in this gospel reading, is saying with no unclear imagery that good and evil are permanently intertwined in this life, and we just need to deal with that. It is not possible for good to flourish on earth without evil creeping in one way or another. So you might think of it like Jesus is agreeing with the philosophers when they say that utopia does not exist on this earth. Now, utopia is the word we use to describe an ideal paradise or a perfect society. And as a matter of fact, if you directly translate utopia from Greek to English, it means no place. Utopia, no place. There is a reason for that. It is true that God is all good. It is true that we are called to fight evil whenever we can. We have got to watch out for that false assumption that we will ever be completely and totally 100% successful in the fight against evil. That's the sort of victory that's just got to wait till heaven, the second coming of Christ, or to echo the exact phrasing in the gospel, the end of the age. So on that idea of good and evil always mixed in life, just want to share a couple of things from both fiction and the real world here and now. The fictional thing is I would love to share with you one of my favorite quotes from my favorite King Arthur movie. And I have a lot of King Arthur movies rattling them up here. I love King Arthur. I always have. Never met a King Arthur story I never liked. At least, I could find at least a little bit of good here and there in anything. Anyway, my favorite movie has not aged well, as have many movies from the early 1980s. But it's my favorite one. It's still my favorite one, as painful as it is to watch sometimes, because they got Merlin perfectly. I mean, they nailed him. Because in that movie, he is one half wise old man, advisor to the king, and half otherworldly prophet, talking about stuff that no human being can understand. To really understand Merlin, you got to have both of those ingredients. So anyway, about halfway through the movie, King Arthur is celebrating with his knights. They're at the round table. They had just united the entire island. The civil war is over. Peace reigns throughout the land. The good guys won. And they were proud of themselves. They were celebrating. And Merlin was really the only one who kind of saw a little bit of foolishness in celebrating a little too early. So he runs out of patience. He gets up to leave. King Arthur is insulted, because that's what happens when you're a king. And just before Merlin gets out of the room, King Arthur calls out to him, "Answer me one thing, Merlin. My kingdom is thriving. All of my subjects have a roof over my head. They all have food enough to eat. Peace reigns throughout the land. There is no more war. And we are strong enough to resist any invasion that comes from outside. Where hides evil in my kingdom?" And Merlin just looks back and says, "Where hides evil? Always in the place you never expect." Always. And that very night, King Arthur is betrayed by his most trusted knight, Lancelot, with Guinevere. And from that point on, King Arthur he's never quite whole ever again. Now, even though that's complete and total fiction, I have always enjoyed the ring of truth in that. Where hides evil? The place you never expect. Always. Now, don't worry, if you are not a fan of King Arthur, we have plenty to talk about here and now with respect to mixing good and evil in life. Because, now that I'm a priest, and now that I'm forced to deal with all this stuff, It is impossible for me to deny or ignore the dangers of illegal drugs. I could have ignored it a few years ago because, as a matter of fact, I grew up a pretty straight-laced kid. I grew up well. I stayed away from all the dangerous stuff in life. You might say that I was nicely insulated from all of that, and I'm grateful for that. Other people in my family, a couple of my friends, not quite so lucky. But I will tell you, a mere 3 years of priesthood has been eye-opening. It is ridiculous. No one, and I mean no one, should have to bury a friend their own age. I mean, not until much, much, much later in life. But that's what drugs do. They are destructive. They corrupt and destroy that which comes in contact with them. And you know, on a certain level, I don't think I really understood that until it became my responsibility to bury the victims. Now, here's the connection between that gospel reading and drugs. The richest counties of Wisconsin, of which Washington County is definitely up there, the richest counties of Wisconsin are dealing with a huge illegal drug problem and have been for some time. Now, common logic would state that you would go to downtown Milwaukee to deal with illegal drug usage, and that's true. But, friends, I am telling you, there is work aplenty to be done right here in our own backyard. And that makes you think. You know, it makes you wonder. You know, I think about all these young adults. They're setting up their life. They move to a rich county in Wisconsin, and they buy a house that's probably a little more expensive than they would have liked, but they deal with it, and they fork over the money because it's a safe neighborhood with good people and effective schools, you name it, and they carve out a life for themselves and their family as far away as possible from the greatest dangers of American society. And for all their trouble, their kids still get mixed up in the wrong people and the wrong kind of fun. That's rough. I mean, that's worse than rough. That is downright unfair. That is what we're talking about. No matter how much good you cultivate, evil will find a way to slither in that place that you're not looking, always. And Jesus warned us about this. He warned us about this, that good and evil will always be mixed in life. We have to avoid that false belief that we will be completely sealed off from all that is bad and harmful in the world. And he warned us about that to keep us on our guard. You know what? It's exactly like gardening. It is. You know, for the sake of the good plants, you gotta rip out the bad weeds. And the annoying thing is, no matter how good you are at your job and no matter how much effort you put into it, you know there's going to be more weeding waiting for you next week. But any gardener will tell you, the garden is worth the weeding, even though the weeds will always try to come back. So maybe we could think of it like this. We are all gardeners of our lives and the lives of our fellows, our community. It is our duty and responsibility to cultivate the good, weed out the bad. And it's unfortunate, but that process will never end. We will never actually run out of work. But even so, we possess the strength and the grace to always resist those things that seek to make us less than who we are and less than what we're supposed to be, less than who we are in the eyes of God. And in spite of all of his warnings, Jesus does promise us that one day our struggles will come to an end. And our efforts here and now on earth will be shown to have been righteous and truly worthwhile.